Rain tapped a soft rhythm against my windshield. I sat in my car, watching elegant guests hurry into the grand wedding venue. My mother's wedding. I hadn't received an invitation. Not a paper one, anyway. My invitation had been a phone call, 24 hours ago. Her voice, sweet as poison, echoed in my mind. "Sweetheart, it's just better if you don't come. You always seem to draw the wrong kind of attention. I need this day to be perfect." The meaning was clear. She believed I was bad luck. I brought ruin. I closed my eyes, the sting fresh and sharp. Then I saw her. The passenger door of a white limo opened, and my mother stepped out, a vision in silk and lace. And on her arm, beaming with pride, was the man she was marrying. My breath caught in my throat. It was Richard Hensley. I felt like the world had frozen. Richard Hensley. My former boss. The man who had taken credit for my work at the architecture firm, then made me the scapegoat when his own calculations nearly cost us a major client. I was quietly forced out. "She's marrying him?" I whispered to the empty car. The betrayal was a physical blow. My mother had held me while I cried after that firing. She had called him a conniving snake. She had pretended to be on my side. Now, I saw the truth. She hadn't just met him after my firing. They had known each other long before. This had been in the works for a while. I watched, numb, as Richard waved to the crowd. Then he pulled forward my half-sister, Ella, introducing her to someone as his new project manager. Sitting there in the cold car, a lifetime of moments clicked into place. It was a pattern I had been too blind to see. When I was 10 and won the art contest, my mother said my painting was too loud. When my first boyfriend broke up with me, she was seen having coffee with him a week later. She always positioned herself as the savior of whoever I had supposedly wronged, especially Ella, her perfect daughter. She didn't just favor Ella. She used her as a weapon against me. This wedding wasn't a new betrayal. It was the biggest move in a game she had been playing my whole life. My phone, sitting on the passenger seat, buzzed suddenly. An unknown number. The message was simple: "I thought you should know, Richard isn't who he says he is." I met the sender at a dimly lit diner away from the wedding chaos. He was a nervous man named Arthur, a former accountant from Richard's firm. He slid a folder across the sticky table. "He manipulated funds," Arthur whispered, his eyes darting around. "But worse, he used your architectural plans for the new Jefferson Community Center. He submitted them as his own to win the city contract." I felt the air leave my lungs. The Jefferson project was my passion, my design. "My firing," I began. Arthur nodded grimly. "He needed to erase your name from the records before the project went public. He couldn't have the real designer around." He leaned closer. "If your mom's marrying him, she's stepping into something dangerous." I drove home, my mind racing. Fury and heartbreak warred inside me. I could expose them right now. Send everything to the news. But that would just make me look like the bitter, jealous daughter my mother always said I was. They would win again. No. I wouldn't play the victim anymore. I needed to be smarter. I needed to make them expose themselves. I would let their own greed and lies trap them. I walked into my quiet apartment, a new sense of calm settling over me. The underdog was gone. In her place was a strategist. I opened my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I navigated to a secret cloud drive and pulled up the original project file for the Jefferson Center. I decided to plant a seed. I created a new email account with a professional signature: Grace Wilson, Principal Architect, Wilson Design Consultancy. I sent Richard a short, polite email. "Congratulations on your wedding. Wishing you and my mother every happiness." Then I added the crucial line: "My new consultancy is keeping me busy, especially with some upcoming city integrity audits. Best of luck." It was a slight exaggeration, but it sounded official and threatening. I hit send and waited. The response was shockingly fast. Within 2 hours, not Richard, but his personal assistant emailed back. Mr. Hensley would appreciate the chance to catch up. Perhaps a casual meeting? I smiled, a cold, determined smile. I wrote back, I'd like that. Let's talk. We met at a quiet, upscale coffee shop. Richard greeted me with a wide, fake smile. Grace. You've certainly landed on your feet, he said, his tone dripping with false surprise. I smiled back, just as falsely. Life has a way of working out. I noticed the slight tremor in his hand as he lifted his cup. He was nervous. I casually mentioned the city audits again, watching his face carefully. He paled noticeably. Yes, well, bureaucracy, he mumbled, shifting in his seat. He was hiding something big, something beyond the stolen design. I could feel it. By the end of our chat, he was falling over himself to be nice. We should discuss a collaboration, he said suddenly. A private dinner. Tomorrow night. I arrived at the expensive restaurant early. I wanted to watch him arrive. From my seat at the bar, I saw him walk in, his secretary trailing him. She discreetly handed him a thin folder. I caught a glimpse of the label, G. Wilson File. My heart beat faster. He thought he was going to intimidate me. As he approached, I subtly opened the voice memo app on my phone and slid it into my pocket. The dinner was full of false charm. Then he leaned in, his voice dropping. You're doing so well, Grace. You do well to stay quiet about the old days. About the Jefferson contract. The threat was clear. He was showing me he had a file on me, trying to scare me into silence. I contacted Arthur again immediately. We dug deeper, and what we found was staggering. Richard hadn't just stolen my design, he had used it to secure the city contract under false pretenses. The contract was still pending final approval from the city council. If they found out the design wasn't his, and that he had fired the real architect, the contract would be void. He would be finished, professionally and financially. A part of me hesitated. My mother had tied her entire future to this man. Destroying him would destroy her, too. But then I remembered her words. Bad luck. I made my decision. I wouldn't attack. I would simply let the truth come out. Let the truth decide who survived. A few days before the wedding, I visited my mother. Her house was a whirlwind of florists and fabric samples. She looked stressed but happy. I found a quiet moment. Mom, I said gently. Are you sure about Richard? Really sure? Her face hardened instantly. There you go, she snapped, her voice cold. You've always envied my happiness. Don't you dare try to ruin this for me, too. The words were a slap. Even now, she saw me as her competitor. As she turned away, Richard walked in. He kissed her cheek, and around his neck, on a lanyard, I saw it. It was my old company keycard, the one I had to return when I was fired. He was wearing it like a trophy. The night before the wedding, I sat in my car again, this time outside my mother's house. I had compiled everything into a detailed report, the stolen designs, the financial discrepancies Arthur had found, the recording of Richard's threat. My finger hovered over the send button. I was staring at a bridal magazine on my passenger seat, my mother's smiling face on the cover. Did I really want to do this? Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a message from a journalist I had once helped with a charity project. Heard you were connected to the Hensley wedding. Big day for Fraud's favorite architect tomorrow. That was the sign. I took a deep breath, and I hit send. The next morning, the news broke. I saw the headline on my phone, Prominent Architect Richard Hensley under investigation for design fraud and misrepresentation. The article named the Jefferson Project. And in the third paragraph it mentioned my name. Not as the whistleblower, but as the original designer, who was allegedly forced out of the firm. I was the wronged party. The shockwaves were immediate. My phone started blowing up with calls from old colleagues. Richard's perfect world was crumbling, just hours before he was set to walk down the aisle. Then, my voicemail lit up. I played it. It was my mother, her voice shrill with panic and rage. Grace! What did you do? I drove to the wedding venue. I didn't plan to go in, but I needed to see it. I had just parked when my mother rushed out, still in her robe, her wedding makeup only half done. She cornered me by my car. You, she spat, her face twisted in anger. You just couldn't let me be happy. You had to ruin this for me. I looked at her, my heart like stone. I didn't do anything you didn't already know, Mom, I said, my voice calm and steady. You knew what he did to me. Suddenly, the venue doors burst open. Richard stormed out, his face purple with fury. He saw us and stalked over. He pointed a shaking finger at my mother. You knew about this? You knew she was a loose cannon. The wedding was called off right there, at the altar. Guests spilled out of the venue, whispering and pointing. Photographers, who were there for the society pages, now had a scandal on their hands. I watched from a distance as the beautiful day dissolved into chaos. My mother sank to the ground, her beautiful robe pooling in the dirt, and sobbed. But they weren't tears of heartbreak. They were tears of utter humiliation. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I saw the black sedans pull up. Two serious-looking men in suits got out and walked straight toward Richard. He was arrested for fraud right there in the parking lot. A week passed. The dust began to settle, but the silence from my family was deafening. My mother had moved in with Ella and was refusing to speak to me. I focused on my work, pouring my energy into my small firm. I took on community restoration projects, work that felt honest and good. Then, I got an email. It was from the City Development Office. They had seen the news, and they had looked up my original Jefferson Center plans. They were impressed. They wanted to hire my firm to officially redesign the project. The victory was sweet. The next day, a lawyer called. Richard's company was being liquidated. I was owed significant restitution for my stolen intellectual property. While reviewing the legal documents, something didn't add up. I started looking into my late father's estate. He had left a small inheritance for me, which my mother had managed until I turned 25. The records were messy. I hired a forensic accountant. What we uncovered made me sick. There were large sums of money, my father's money, that had been transferred out years ago. The trail led straight to Richard's firm. They had used my father's money, my inheritance, to fund his business. The financial betrayal was almost worse than the emotional one. I scheduled a quiet, formal legal audit of the estate. To my surprise, Ella showed up at my door. She looked tired and nervous. Mom's blaming you for everything, she said, wringing her hands. She's telling everyone you destroyed her life out of jealousy. I just listened. Then Ella took a deep breath. But she's lying to herself. And to me. She pulled out her phone. I recorded this. She played a conversation where our mother was talking to a friend, admitting she knew Richard had borrowed some of Grace's ideas and that the old company had some accounting issues. Ella looked at me, her eyes clear for the first time. Do what you have to, Grace. I'm done protecting her. I took Ella's recording and all the financial evidence to my lawyer. My goal wasn't to ruin my mother further. It was to clear my name completely and reclaim what was rightfully mine. The formal audit proved I had no part in the old company's scandals and that my mother had misappropriated funds from my father's estate. The judge was not sympathetic to her. He ordered immediate restitution from her remaining assets. The main asset was the house she had been living in, the one she had planned to sell after the wedding. It was seized by the court to pay the judgment. A few days later, my mother called. She was sobbing, the anger gone, replaced by a hollow despair. You took everything from me, Grace. My husband, my home, everything. I felt a pang of sadness, but not guilt. You gave everything away, Mom, I answered softly. You gave it to the wrong people. And you tried to give me away, too. I felt a strange sense of peace. This wasn't about winning anymore. It was about being free. The next day, an email arrived from a prominent reporter. Your story is inspiring, it read. You turned betrayal into purpose. Can we interview you? I agreed to the interview. The story came out in a national magazine with the title, The Architect Who Designed Her Comeback. The article painted me as a talented, wronged woman who handled everything with dignity and grace. It focused on my new community work and my resilience. The public response was overwhelmingly supportive. In the article, I was quoted saying, sometimes, distance is the only way to rebuild a family. It was honest and graceful. I knew she would see it. My mother, staying in a small rental apartment, read the article. A friend told me she sat at her kitchen table and wept silent, lonely tears. Months passed. My business flourished. One afternoon, my mother asked to meet. She looked older. She started by saying she had done a lot of thinking, that she was sorry. But within minutes, the old patterns emerged. Maybe if you gave a statement, she suggested, telling people I was also a victim. It would help me get my reputation back. I listened, and I finally saw it clearly. She wasn't seeking reconciliation. She was seeking a new tool to use. Closure didn't mean I had to let her back in. I stood up from the table. Mom, I said, my voice firm. You taught me one thing, never build on a rotten foundation. I needed to find my own peace. I drove to the cemetery where my father was buried. It was a quiet, sunny day. I told him about everything, the wedding, the betrayal, my new success. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Then, I took off the simple silver ring my mother had given me as a teenager and placed it on his headstone. It was a symbol. I was leaving her pain, her games, and her legacy right there. The cycle was ending. As I turned to leave, a car pulled up. It was Ella. She got out, her face serious. You're not going to believe who's trying to make a comeback, she said. It was Richard. He was out on bail and had started a consulting firm. Ella showed me his new website. My heart stopped. There, on the front page, were my early sketches for the Jefferson Center. He was using my designs. Again. But this time I was ready. While he was scrambling, I had been working with the city. I had formally trademarked and licensed all my architectural designs and concepts. He had no right to use them. My lawyer acted fast. We sent a cease and desist letter that was a work of art. It outlined every legal violation and promised swift, severe action. The letter was signed, with a flourish, by me. The city held a public meeting to officially announce the new, approved design for the Jefferson Community Center, my design. The auditorium was packed. I presented my vision, and the room broke into warm, genuine applause. As I left the stage, my eyes scanned the crowd. And there they were, in the very back row, my mother and Richard, looking faded and defeated. They had watched the entire community celebrate the very project he had stolen, now rightfully returned to me. I had won, not through revenge, but through my own excellence. As I walked past their row, my mother looked up. I heard her whisper, so faint I almost missed it, you really did bring luck. I stopped and turned to her. I offered a small, gentle smile, free of bitterness. Not luck, Mom. Just hard work. I didn't wait for a reply. I walked out of the auditorium and into the bright sunlight. I felt free, respected, and finally at peace. A few weeks later, I was awarded my most symbolic project yet. The old wedding venue, the place that had shut me out, had fallen into bankruptcy after the scandal. The new owners hired my firm to redesign and rebuild it into a community arts center. The cycle was complete. The place that once barred my entry would now stand under my name, my design, a testament to my resilience.